The baby shower is on the calendar. So is Chrisean Rock's flight. And that would be regular gossip if this was a regular situation. It's not, because we're talking about a man who got out of prison, got his pregnant girlfriend on stream, told that same girlfriend he cheated with his ex, then turned right back around and let the entire internet watch him keep both stories alive at once. So the question this weekend isn't, is it messy? That part's settled. The question is simpler than that. When Sunday gets here, who actually controls Blueface time? And real quick, if this kind of paper trail breakdown fits your feed, lock in now and keep the alerts on, because this one doesn't stay small for long. Here's the dry version before this turns into theater. Blueface was released from prison on November 3rd after serving 21 months on a probation violation case tied to a 2021 assault matter. Then in February, he and Neveah Akira revealed on livestream that she was pregnant with his child. By late July, he was back in public circulation with Chrisean Rock at a Los Angeles boat party, and within a day he admitted to Neveah on stream that he cheated with Chrisean. Now, a clip circulating from Chrisean's side says she's headed to LA for a Jason Lee interview, a Monday court date, and legal meetings, while chatter around Neveah's baby shower puts the same weekend under a microscope. There is one more piece of context sitting outside the immediate weekend drama. Hollywood Unlocked's later account of the Jason Lee interview describes Blueface discussing not only prison and Chrisean, but also Jaden Alexis, Whack 100, Hazel, his mother Carlissa Saffold, and the way he understands his public circle. The article reports that he described the circus as something he had intentionally created and called himself the ringmaster. That does not prove every individual event was choreographed, and it does not establish anyone else's private motive. It does establish that the man at the center of this story has publicly framed spectacle as part of the operating environment. Start with the hard paper, because the hard paper is what keeps this from drifting into fanfiction. Blueface return to the internet wasn't subtle. XXL reported that after his release, he posted a home video announcing he was out, while the same report tied that release to a 4-year sentence imposed in August 2024 and noted he served 21 months before coming home. That matters because everything after that release happens on a compressed clock. This is not some ancient on-again, off-again mess resurfacing by accident. This is fresh out, immediate, still being written chaos. One detail from that release report changes the temperature around the comeback. XXL says Blueface's mother had been publicly teasing his return for weeks, while his father described the transition as the end of one family chapter and the beginning of another. So the release was not merely a legal status update. It arrived as a family media event before Blueface even had time to settle back into ordinary life. The homecoming already had an audience, a pickup narrative, and a ready-made new beginnings frame. That is important because a person can leave custody while the story around him remains in custody of the audience. The release clip becomes the first receipt in a new cycle. His return is announced. His family reacts. The public waits for the first relationship update. Then the pregnancy reveal arrives. Then the old relationship walks back into the frame. The sequence is not proof of a plan, but it does explain why every private move gets interpreted as a public chapter before the people involved have finished living it. The release also comes with a practical pressure that does not show up in the romantic headlines. Hollywood Unlocked reports that Blueface discussed prison finances, new tattoos, his mother's online presence, co-parenting, and the pressure of re-entering fame. Those subjects matter because they place the relationship drama inside a broader re-entry package. He was not only returning to Neveah or returning to Chrisean. He was returning to a public identity that had been waiting for him to produce another installment. Then the pregnancy goes public. On February 22nd, Blueface and Neveah Akira showed positive test results on livestream. Hot97 reported he reacted on camera by telling her, "You're having a Blueface baby," and the Shade Rooms separately described the same reveal, including Blueface celebrating the second test reading pregnant. So Neveah is not some speculative side character in this story. She is the current pregnancy, the current home base, the current public relationship being presented to viewers. And the pregnancy reveal has a digital feature people overlook. It did not arrive as a quiet family announcement followed by a controlled statement. It arrived through a live stream where the audience could watch the reaction, register the test, and convert the moment into clips. The record from Hot 97 describes the reveal as an on-camera exchange, not a later summary. That means the audience was not simply informed that a pregnancy existed, it was invited into the reaction itself. Had to pause on that. The format matters almost as much as the announcement. And for a minute, the presentation looked almost weirdly clean. Complex noted that Blueface had posted maternity photos and used the phrase family first while celebrating the family's upcoming arrival, and the same report said Neveah was expected to give birth on August 24th. That kind of branding matters more than people think. Because once you publicly stamp family first on a situation, every move after that gets measured against it. Every live, every trip, every camera angle, every disappearance. There is a business layer underneath that image. A maternity shoot is not only a personal keepsake once it enters the public feed. It becomes a visual asset attached to a family narrative. The phrase, the photos, and the expected birth date give viewers a stable frame to compare against later footage. That is why the later clips hit with more force than an ordinary argument would. They do not arrive in an empty room. They arrive beside a polished public promise. Then July shows up and starts undoing the packaging. On July 20th, according to XXL, Blueface and Chrisean Rock were together at a boat party in Los Angeles while he streamed live on Twitch. That same report says Chrisean confronted him directly over paternity. "What's all that you saying? That's not your baby." And when they linked up again later on the boat, after she prayed over him, Blueface declared their beef over. But Chrisean answered with the line that actually matters: "When you start claiming your son, that's when the beef is over." Just like that, the whole scene stops being about nostalgia and turns back into leverage. The audio of that encounter also carries information the written recap cannot fully flatten. The reported exchange moves through laughter, confrontation, prayer, and a refusal to accept the declaration that the beef is over. The emotional register changes without the underlying issue changing. That is the audio magnifier. The room can sound light while the paternity question remains heavy. The performance of calm does not erase the demand underneath it. One day later, Blueface sits Neveah down and admits he cheated. Complex quoted him saying, "I cheated. I know. Sorry." XXL captured the same moment and included Neveah's response. "What are you sorry for? No reason to say sorry if you had intentions on doing it." Then he shuts the exchange down with, "Take my apology and take it with honor." That is not closure. That is a man trying to fast-forward past consequences while the livestream is still rolling. The behavioral magnifier sits in the order of those clips. The public receives the reunion, the paternity pressure, the text exchange, and then the confession. Each item changes the meaning of the previous one. The apology does not sit beside an abstract rumor. It sits after the audience has already seen the former couple reconnect and after Chrisean's side of the story has become visible. That is why the admission feels less like a disclosure arriving from nowhere and more like a response to a story that was already moving without permission. And notice how fast the calendar moves. Complex says the cheating admission came just one day after the boat party. XXL says after the party, Blueface shared a screenshot of texts showing Chrisean trying to come over later that night, and he captioned it by accusing her of wanting to be part of the circus. So in the span of basically a day, the public sees the reunion, the paternity confrontation, the after-hours text exchange, and then the confession to the pregnant girlfriend. That's not one bad night. That's a sequence. Here is the micro-loop I would keep open around this point. When a sequence moves from live video to private text screenshot to another live confession, which part is actually private anymore? The answer will matter later, because the weekend question is not only where Blueface goes. It is whether the first proof of where he went appears through his own post, somebody else's clip, or a reaction from the person left waiting. Now add the next layer. On July 27th, XXL reported that Blueface posted a photo of Chrisean holding Chrisean Jr. with the caption "My son," then deleted it. The same article places that post directly after the boat party reunion and directly before fresh beach footage of the two together went viral on July 28th. So the public line had already moved from denial to accidental acknowledgement to visible togetherness in under 10 days. If you're Neveah watching that while carrying his child, tell me what part of that reads stable. All hip-hop's account adds a complication to that digital receipt. It reports that Blueface later blamed Chrisean for putting the image on his Instagram story and denied that he had made the post himself. That does not erase the screenshot, and it does not prove who physically uploaded it. It does show that the caption became a contested object almost immediately. The post said one thing. The later explanation challenged the authorship. The public was left with the image, the deletion, and two competing readings of how it got there. That is a digital magnifier, not a paternity ruling. A screenshot can prove that an image circulated. It cannot, by itself, settle the biological question or reveal the private intention behind the upload. But strategically, the object still matters. A deleted post creates a second story about the deletion, and a denial creates a third story about the denial. One caption becomes 3 separate content cycles before anyone reaches a final answer. There's another receipt people keep skipping because it sounds petty on first listen. Hot New Hip Hop reported a live stream where Neveah referred to Chrisean as a baby disabler, and Blueface laughed in disbelief before half-starting a comeback he never finished. That exchange matters less for the insult than for the atmosphere. It tells you the subject of Chrisean is not dead in that house. It is active enough to joke about, active enough to bait with, active enough to trigger instant reactions in real time. The repeated phrase pattern is the clue here. The older relationship does not need a formal entrance because everybody in the room already understands the reference. A nickname, an insult, a laugh, a half-finished response. These are low-cost signals that keep a third person present without requiring a full discussion. If you spotted how often the name enters through a joke instead of a direct statement, drop the timestamp. That pattern says more about household tension than a polished caption ever could. And then we get the clip that pushed this weekend from regular dysfunction into appointment viewing. In a circulating Instagram reel surfaced in search results, Chrisean says she has a Jason Lee interview, a court date Monday, and lawyer business Friday, and says she has to be out there. Separate social chatter around the same clip frames Neveah's baby shower as happening that same weekend. That by itself does not prove Chrisean is flying in for Blueface. Let me be careful there. But it absolutely proves the timing collision is real enough that people around the situation immediately read it through him. The practical question is what kind of public appointment each event represents. A court date carries procedural weight. A legal meeting carries private stakes. A Jason Lee appearance carries interview value. A baby shower carries family symbolism. Those are not interchangeable obligations, but they can occupy the same weekend and compete for the same attention. That is where the calendar becomes a pressure test rather than a simple itinerary. Around the 14-minute reveal, the receipt that had been sitting in the folder finally becomes useful. Hollywood Unlocked reports that Blueface told Jason Lee he and Chrisean had publicly maintained a baby storyline because it made money and fit the narrative, while also saying he now disputes the child paternity. Those are his reported statements, not an independent finding about the child's biology. But they give the deleted "My Son" post a new frame. The public is not only watching a caption disappear, it is watching a person explain the value of the story that caption seemed to reinforce. That's the filing. Those are the exhibits. No poetry needed. Now let's put the overlay on it, because the pattern is where this stops looking random. A lot of people are reading this as Blueface can't choose between two women. Too soft. Way too soft. The better read is that Blueface keeps converting private milestones into public scheduling battles. Prison release becomes content. Pregnancy reveal becomes content. Paternity dispute becomes content. Cheating confession becomes content. Even the possibility of a baby shower conflict becomes content before the weekend has fully arrived. The personal event is never allowed to stay personal long enough to stabilize. The interview material gives that pattern a business vocabulary. Hollywood Unlocked reports that Blueface described himself as the reason people in his circle became known to the public and characterized himself as the ringmaster. Again, that is his reported framing, not an outside audit of every interaction. But it explains why the private milestone keeps getting treated like a release window. Every person around him can become a character. Every argument can become a clip. Every denial can extend the season. And the dates are ugly if you line them up instead of consuming them clip by clip. November, he gets out. February, Neveah's pregnancy goes public. July 20th, boat party with Chrisean. July 21st, he admits cheating. July 27th, My Son story. July 28th, beach footage. By the time this baby shower weekend chatter arrives, Neveah is not reacting to one isolated threat. She's reacting to a month-by-month pattern where every time the current relationship tries to become official, the previous relationship re-enters through a side door that just happens to already have a camera pointed at it. The calendar collision also contains a deletion sequence. The boat footage remains available through reporting. The texts are shown through a screenshot. The "My Son" caption disappears. The beach video then circulates. The weekend travel clip follows. A digital trail-like that does not require anyone to narrate the plot. The order of preservation and removal does the narrating. What stays becomes evidence of continuity. What vanishes becomes evidence of dispute. What gets reposted becomes evidence of demand. Wait, back up. This part's the part. Complex says Blueface had told Neveah just days before the cheating confession, "I wouldn't have made you my girlfriend if I was going to cheat on you." Then the confession lands almost immediately after the boat party reunion with Chrisean. So when Neveah gets tense about one more weekend overlap, she's not doing random insecurity theater. She is looking at a man whose spoken assurances have already expired on contact. That changes the weight of every "it's nothing" that follows. And Chrisean's side of the sequence matters too. At the boat party, her central ask was not "choose me" in the romantic sense. XXL and Hot New Hip Hop both point to the same core demand: publicly claim the child. In other words, the unresolved issue between them is not ancient chemistry floating around for vibes. It's paternity, recognition, and status. So when she pops up in the same city on the same weekend as Neveah's baby shower, the overlap hits harder because it doesn't symbolize an old fling. It symbolizes unfinished business with legal, emotional, and public image consequences. The timing of the Jason Lee appearance creates a second overlay. Hollywood Unlocked says the interview covered prison, fatherhood, Jaden, Chrisean, Neveah, business, and the public circus. That is a wide subject list, but it is also a useful sequence. The interview turns private relationships into a single narrative package. The old relationship, current pregnancy, prison return, and brand identity can all be discussed in one room. The conversation becomes a container large enough to hold every contradiction without resolving any of them. Now put Neveah back in frame. TMZ, in a later July stream recap, described her sitting beside Blueface while he made crude remarks about their sex life during pregnancy and quoted her saying, "He goes and gives it to somebody else." That line is ugly, but it's also revealing, because it shows Neveah herself has already moved from arguing over what happened to arguing over what kind of relationship this even is while she's pregnant. That is not a secure house getting rattled from outside. That is a shaky house hearing footsteps on the porch and already knowing the door doesn't latch right. The behavioral pattern is not limited to the women reacting to him. It includes the way he places one relationship beside another. Jaden appears in the Jason Lee account as a former partner and co-parent. Chrisean appears as the unresolved public bond. Neveah appears as the current pregnancy. Hollywood Unlocked reports that Blueface discussed all three relationship lanes in the same interview, along with his own view of loyalty and co-parenting. That compression is revealing. Separate households and separate histories become one conversational ecosystem once he narrates them together. There's also the Jason Lee piece, and people are not taking that seriously enough. The YouTube listing for the interview is titled Blueface Fresh Out, Prison, Chrisean, Fake Baby Drama, and the Circus He Created. Not circus around him. The circus he created. And when the transcript summary is pulled, Blueface is described as openly embracing the role of ringmaster, saying it will continuously be some type of chaos and presenting himself as someone who intentionally creates viral moments to stay relevant. Actually, hold up, read that twice. A man who publicly defines the chaos as part of his operation is not caught in the storm. He is Monetizing the weather. That changes how the weekend collision reads. Because once the person in the middle starts telling you the circus is part of the brand, you can't keep analyzing these overlaps like they're all tragic accidents. Some of them are just incentives wearing eyeliner. A baby shower has emotional value. Chrisean's arrival has narrative value. A live stream argument has viral value. A half denial has replay value. And the most dangerous thing for Neveah in that mix is not even Chrisean specifically. It's that her pregnancy can get demoted from life event to episode without anybody in the middle seeming to mind. The digital mechanic underneath that is simple, every new post can serve two audiences at once. The people invested in Neveah see a current relationship under pressure. The people invested in Chrisean see a paternity dispute that has not been closed. Blueface gets attention from both groups without needing to deliver a final answer to either. That is why ambiguity has value here. A resolved story ends. An unresolved story keeps generating replies, duets, reaction videos, and competing captions. If that sounds harsh, ask what else explains the language. In the XXL cheating report, Blueface describes Chrisean's late-night pitch with lines like "We a power couple," then dismisses it by saying, "Your time is up. It's Neveah's turn." That is not the language of repair. That is slot management, shift scheduling, rotations, turns. Once somebody starts talking like that, every woman around him is one status update away from being positioned, replaced, rotated, or reintroduced depending on what moment plays best. And that's why the ID hiding chatter, the tears, the "you're not going anywhere this weekend" energy from the raw clips makes emotional sense even when some of the specifics are still just social video material. Because if you're Neveah, the threat is not merely he might see Chrisean. He already did. He already admitted it crossed the line. He already reopened paternity optics. He already let the internet watch the door stay unlocked. So a same weekend LA trip doesn't feel neutral anymore, even if the stated reason is interviews and court. It feels like the next scene arriving on time. Let me zoom tighter, because there are a few small details doing a lot of hidden work here. First, magnifier. The deleted "My Son" post. That is one screenshot, one caption, one deletion. Tiny move, huge consequence. For years, the paternity issue sat in the zone of denial, ambiguity, provocation, and public arguing. The second Blueface posts "My Son," even if he deletes it, he changes the balance. He gives Chrisean proof of acknowledgement that fans can save, repost, and weaponize forever. That one story does more damage to the "we're done with this" narrative than 20 casual denials ever fixed. Second magnifier, the word circus. Blueface uses it on his Instagram story about Chrisean wanting to be part of the circus, and the Jason Lee interview title uses it too, framing him around the spectacle he created. Same word, two different surfaces, same worldview. That matters because the language gives away the operating system. He does not describe this environment like a family crisis he once contained. He describes it like a show with casting problems. Third magnifier, family first versus the calendar that followed. Complex notes that maternity photos existed and that phrase was part of the rollout. Fine. Nice image. But then the July stack hits. Boat party, confession, text receipts, "My son," beach footage. So the slogan and the actions do not reconcile cleanly. And when the image and the actions stop agreeing, the image becomes evidence too. Not supportive evidence. Contradictory evidence. Fourth magnifier. Listen to what survives after the deletion. The caption may disappear from the account, but XXL reports that the image had already spread across social media. All Hip Hop reports that Blueface later disputed responsibility for the upload. That means the digital artifact acquires a second life independent of the original account. Once the audience saves the frame, the account holder no longer controls the whole meaning. The post can be denied, reposted, dissected, and placed beside every later statement. Fifth magnifier, the audio texture of the boat party exchange. XXL's recap places laughter around the paternity confrontation and then records the return to the same demand after the prayer. That repetition matters. The setting changes, the mood shifts, and the question comes back. The issue is not removed by moving to another part of the boat or changing the tone of the interaction. It follows them through the scene. Sixth magnifier, the business frame. Hollywood Unlocked reports Blueface saying that the Public Baby storyline made money and worked as a storyline, while also reporting his claim that the biological father question did not fit that storyline. I'm not treating that as independently proven motive. I'm treating it as a statement attributed to the central figure about how narrative value entered the situation. If family identity can be discussed as storyline value, then the stakes are no longer only romantic. They are also commercial and reputational. Seventh magnifier, the name changes. In one part of the public story, the child is discussed through paternity denial. In another, The caption says, "My son." In the later interview account, Blueface is reported to call the baby drama fake and to say he had been acting as a fatherly figure. The label applied to the child changes with the speaker's position. That is not a DNA result. It is a vocabulary record. And vocabulary records tell you when a public story is being stabilized, challenged, or reopened. Okay, so if that's true, then what exactly is Neveah in trouble from? Not from Chrisean being physically in Los Angeles by itself. Let's stay honest. Chrisean saying she has woke, court, and lawyer obligations is not the same thing as saying I'm flying in to ruin a baby shower. I'm not putting that on the record because the receipts don't support it cleanly enough. The problem is the pattern reads as if Blueface has left the meaning of that trip wide open. That ambiguity is the whole weapon. It lets one side say business, the other side hear interference, and the internet do the rest for free. There's your hedge, by the way. Necessary one. Because not every receipt here is equally hard. The prison release is hard. The pregnancy reveal is hard. The cheating confession is hard. The My Son story is hard enough because it was reported and screen captured. Chrisean's motive for being in LA this specific weekend? That part still lives in reported clip territory and pattern reading. So keep the certainty where it belongs. That's how you avoid getting played by the loudest version of the story. And there is a quieter point here. A person does not need to prove an intention to produce a predictable effect. If a trip has several legitimate stated purposes, but it lands beside a baby shower, an unresolved paternity dispute, and a recent cheating confession, the public will assign meaning before the traveler reaches the city. The uncertainty becomes the content. Nobody has to announce a confrontation for the audience to start tracking entrances, exits, cars, and hotel room rumors. Now let's talk about the framing war, because this story is being sold in 3 different packages. Package 1 is the gossip frame. Blueface can't stop bouncing between women, everybody's emotional, baby shower weekend is about to explode, pass the popcorn. That frame survives because it's easy and because the clips are loud enough to support it at surface level. Social pages love this frame because it doesn't require chronology, just reaction. Package 2 is the redemption with chaos frame. That's closer to what some of the post-prison coverage and the Jason Lee ecosystem flirt with. Fresh out, reflective enough to talk, still controversial, still magnetic, still central to the spectacle. In that frame, the mess is almost part of the charm, proof that he remains the same compelling problem he always was. The interview title itself does a lot of that work before the man even opens his mouth. Package 3 is the document frame, and this is the one I care about. In the document frame, the romance stops being the headline and the sequencing becomes the headline. Release, pregnancy reveal, boat party, paternity confrontation, cheating confession, deleted acknowledgement, beach footage, weekend overlap. Once you lay it out like that, the story is not who does he love. The story is why does every attempt at stability immediately get interrupted by a public act that keeps the triangle commercially alive. The 4th package comes from the central figure's own later framing, the Manager of Chaos version. Hollywood Unlocked reports Blueface calling himself the ringmaster and saying that the public would not know the people in his circle without him. That framing puts control at the center. The gossip frame asks which woman wins. The document frame asks what happened when. The ringmaster frame asks who benefits from keeping all of the characters visible. The outlet choices also matter. XXL emphasizes dates, quotes, screenshots, and the order of a boat party and cheating stories. Complex emphasizes the relationship contradiction and the family brand language. Hollywood Unlocked expands the lens into prison, business, fatherhood, and the self-described circus. None of those emphases is neutral in effect. One creates a timeline. One creates a relationship profile. One creates a personality and brand profile. Put them together and the story becomes larger than a weekend argument. A headline-based counterframe will say this is simply a newly released rapper explaining old drama and defending himself. That deserves more than a laugh. Prison release coverage often centers the subject's return, and an interview platform naturally gives him room to explain his own version. The later Hollywood Unlocked account does report that Blueface discussed prison lessons, loyalty, fatherhood, and his own view of Chrisean and Neveah. So yes, there is a legitimate self-explanation frame here. But the paper still limits that defense. His explanation cannot erase the independently reported order of the boat party, the admission to Neveah, the text screenshot, the deleted My Son image, and the beach footage. It can contest meaning. It can contest authorship. It can contest paternity. It cannot make the timeline disappear. Pass 1 gives us the events. Pass 2 gives us the sequence. Pass 3 gives us the language and the digital artifacts. The explanation joins the folder. It does not empty it. Somebody's going to say, fairly, that this weekend may still amount to nothing. That Chrisean can come to LA for work, Blueface can show up for Neveah, the baby shower can happen, and all this panic can look silly by Monday. I respect that read. Honestly, I do. Because the specific act of ditching the shower is not proven at the time of these receipts. But the countercase breaks down once you ask a tougher question. Why does Neveah have so little reason to trust the calm version? Blueface already met up with Chrisean at the boat party. He already admitted cheating. He already participated in the renewed paternity storyline. He already let family first coexist with beach clips and deleted captions. So even if Sunday passes without a dramatic no-show, the instability would still be real. The paper already established that. And that's where the mainstream read keeps chickening out. Because the safe version says everybody involved is messy. Sure, fine. That's the easy summary. The sharper version is that Blueface benefits from leaving each woman just secure enough to stay in the frame and just unsettled enough to keep reacting on camera. That's not a romantic triangle. That's engagement architecture. Here's the verdict I think people are dancing around. This is algorithmic design wearing relationship clothes. The mainstream read will still tell you this is one man torn between a current pregnancy and an old bond. I think that understates what the receipts show. The stronger read is that Blueface has turned unresolved paternity, pregnancy visibility, post-prison curiosity, and public access to his private life into one blended content engine, and each new family milestone gets absorbed into that machine the second it can produce a clip. That's why Neveah is in trouble, and not in the cartoon way people mean it. She's in trouble because pregnancy did not remove her from the format. It inducted her into it. The evidence says the current relationship was marketed, the instability was live-streamed, the contradiction was admitted, and the past relationship remained active enough to bend the calendar anyway. Once that happens, the baby shower is no longer just a baby shower. It becomes a stage test. Can a real-life milestone beat the gravitational pull of the older, louder, better-performing storyline? The added problem is that the central figure has now supplied language that supports the machinery read. Hollywood Unlocked reports him describing the public baby narrative as a storyline that made money and describing himself as the ringmaster. That does not prove every event was staged. It does mean the strongest version of the defense cannot be nobody here understands the value of attention. The reporting says the value was discussed openly. And the ugly part is, everybody can tell. Neveah can tell because the overlap bothers her before it even materializes. Chrisean can tell because her public demand is not vague affection, it's recognition and status. The audience can tell because they don't ask will he be loyal, they ask where will he be this weekend. Even the framing of the conversation has shifted from emotion to logistics. That is a bad sign. When a relationship gets reduced to itinerary warfare, the trust already left through the side exit. Here's another jab people may not like. If a man can tell one woman your time is up, it's Neveah's turn. Then sit with Neveah and treat the cheating confession like a formality. He is not choosing anyone in the grown-up sense. He is managing reactions. Short-term reactions. Audience reactions. Household reactions. Comment section reactions. That's a different skill set, and it's uglier because it can masquerade as honesty. And no, I'm not buying the his just brutally transparent defense either. Telling the truth after the footage exists is not integrity. That's cleanup. Saying, I cheated after the boat party reunion, the texts, and the chatter are already circulating is not noble. That's the man realizing secrecy failed faster than usual. There is a softer jab, because the softer one is sometimes more accurate. Maybe Blueface genuinely believes that speaking every thought out loud counts as accountability. The problem is that confession without a boundary can become another form of performance. It gives the audience a dramatic moment while leaving the injured person to manage the practical consequences. The driest joke in this whole thing is that the most honest line may have been the circus line. because at least that one fits the evidence. And the paternity angle makes it even rougher. Once Chrisean gets the "my son" screenshot into the public bloodstream, whether intentionally or not, she gains a new kind of leverage over the whole narrative. Not just emotional leverage, narrative leverage. Suddenly every "we're done" has to compete with visible acknowledgement. Every current girlfriend reassurance has to survive the existence of that caption. One screenshot can do that. Wild. The counterpoint is that the screenshot itself remains disputed. All hip-hop reports Blueface blamed Chrisean for the post, while XXL reports the image circulated after he deleted it. So the fair statement is not that the caption conclusively settled paternity. The fair statement is that the caption created a public acknowledgement story that Blueface then had to contest. That distinction matters, but it does not make the digital effect vanish. I also think people are underrating how much the post-prison framing matters psychologically. Coming home from 21 months away already creates a rush of attention, opportunism, re-entry drama, and identity performance. The Jason Lee appearance packages that re-entry as event television. So instead of rebuilding private boundaries first and then speaking later, Blueface seems to have walked straight from confinement back into broadcast mode. That choice alone makes every relationship around him less stable. And I have to say something about this part specifically. The prison return evidence is not just atmosphere. XXL's report places the release on a specific date, identifies the sentence, identifies the probation violation, and describes the homecoming posts from his family. That is a hard timeline anchor. When later relationship material is measured from that anchor, the post-prison period does not look like a distant reset. It looks like a rapid re-entry into the same attention economy. Quiet part? Neveah may have the current title, but Chrisean still has unresolved story equity. And story equity is dangerous around a man who openly understands spectacle. I don't even think the most important question is whether Blueface physically appears at the baby shower anymore. That matters, obviously. But the deeper question is what he does with the hours around it. Does he narrow the frame, shut the doors, protect the milestone, and let Neveah have one weekend that isn't cross-promoted by old chaos? Or does he keep every channel half open, let the ambiguity breathe, and collect the attention from both rooms at once? That's the real test. Not flowers, not captions, behavior under timing pressure. The second scenario is not a spectacular blow-up. It is a technical success that still fails emotionally. Blueface appears, takes a picture, posts a supportive line, and then allows another clip from Chrisean's orbit to dominate the same news cycle. On paper, he can claim he showed up. In practice, the milestone still gets split into competing headlines. That is how a person can satisfy the calendar and still lose the room. So what happens next? The most likely landing is the half-commitment move. Watch for Blueface to position himself just close enough to Neveah's event to claim presence, support, or technical participation, while still leaving enough daylight for the Chrisean orbit to dominate the conversation online. That can look like a quick appearance, a selective post, a carefully timed absence with an explanation, or a stream that reframes whatever happened as misunderstanding. By the time Monday hits, the public argument will probably be less "was he there" and more "did that count?" And if it gets that muddy, he wins the ambiguity war again. The opposition's likely failure in that scenario will be trying to prove emotional security through one isolated image. A single photograph may establish presence, but it will not erase the earlier confession, the deleted caption, or the weekend overlap. If the image arrives without a clear behavioral boundary around it, the audience will treat it as another exhibit rather than a conclusion. Don't be surprised if the wild card is not a dramatic confrontation at all, but another tiny digital object. A screenshot, a caption, a repost, a new clip from a parking lot, a car, a lunch table, a couch. That's been the rhythm here. The big emotional fallout keeps getting triggered by small, portable receipts. Somebody in the comments is going to swear the real switch flipped with that deleted "my son" post, and honestly, they might have a case. One more post like that on the wrong afternoon and the whole weekend gets renamed in real time. The table flipper would be a clean boundary. If Blueface publicly separates the baby shower event from the Chrisean storyline, declines to livestream the private moment, and refuses to turn the weekend into another paternity argument, the content engine loses its easiest fuel. That would not repair everything. It would not rewrite the cheating admission. It would not settle the biological dispute, but it would change the next receipt from reaction to restraint. There's also a legal media possibility people should keep on the table. If Chrisean's LA trip really is tied to court, lawyers, and adjacently appearance, then the weekend may generate two narratives at once, the family event narrative and the public positioning narrative. If those run side by side, Blueface could end up reacting not as a boyfriend or co-parent first, but as a live brand manager trying to keep ahead of whichever clip starts winning. That will look chaotic on the surface. Underneath, it will look familiar. By the next few weeks, expect the paternity argument to keep resurfacing through small corrections rather than one final announcement. Hollywood Unlocked reports that Blueface's later interview contained renewed denial, while the earlier XXL report documented the "My Son" caption and its deletion. Those two receipts can continue to live beside each other because one is an image event and the other is a verbal explanation. The audience will keep comparing them even if the people involved move on to a different argument. The longer residue is the part one think matters most. If this pattern holds, every future milestone around Neveah's child risks becoming negotiable public property. Birth, first photos, visits, holidays, co-parent boundaries. Any one of those can get folded into the same triangle if no hard perimeter gets built now. And once a woman gets written into that format during pregnancy, it gets harder, not easier, to write her back out later. That's the residue. Not one ruined shower. A recurring structure where intimate events are always one live stream away from becoming somebody else's content cycle. A 5-view aftershock would not require every current relationship to remain intact. In fact, the people may change while the format stays. The same structure can move to a new partner, a new child, a new interview, or a new public dispute. What lasts is the habit of turning private instability into serialized evidence. The names may rotate. The audience behavior will remain familiar. Watch what happens when the child actually arrives. That's when the math gets less forgiving. Because babies force schedule, money, visibility, visitation, naming, and public acknowledgement into concrete form. If Blueface is still operating like a ringmaster by then, the room for soft ambiguity shrinks hard. One side will want clarity. One side will want recognition. And the audience will still be there, waiting for the next clip like that's normal. It isn't. The opposition's failure there will be assuming that a viral clarification can substitute for consistent conduct. A statement can change the headline for a day. A schedule, a custody arrangement, a financial responsibility, and a stable boundary will determine what the child's life actually feels like. Those are different categories, and the internet tends to confuse them because a caption arrives faster than a record. And 5 years from now, this weekend probably won't matter because of one shower or one trip. It'll matter if it ends up being the moment Neveah realized she wasn't competing with one woman. She was competing with a format. That's a much harder thing to beat. So back to the question from the top, who actually controls Blueface time when Sunday gets here? The honest answer is, maybe not even Blueface in the ordinary sense. The stronger force looks like the storyline he keeps feeding. If he protects Neveah's milestone cleanly, that says one thing. If the weekend gets blurred, interrupted, or recentered around Chrisean's arrival, that says something louder. Either way, the result will tell us more than any apology clip already has. If this landed where you land, leave your read on it and keep the notifications on. The loop here was simple. Who owns Sunday? We're about to find out whether it belongs to the mother of the coming child, the unresolved mother of the already public one, or the circus that keeps billing both. Wrap and receipt will be back when the next receipt drops.